this week's video. For this week, I thought I would catch you up on what I've been reading the past few months. It's been a hard couple of months, y'all, reading-wise. I think I only had maybe like one or two books that I loved. And then there's one book that is possibly my biggest disappointment of this year. And I'm going to save that one for last because yeesh. So, I figure let's just jump into what I've been reading the past few months. So, the first one is a Susan Mallery, Before Summer Ends. And it's Nyssa and Desmond. And Desmond I was already predisposed to like because I'm a Lost fan. So, Desmond. But it is, they've been friends for like the longest time. He sort of was kind of not necessarily taken in by her family, but he spent a lot of time with her family because his own family was kind of trash. His parents, they're sort of very kind of like upper class society people who are sort of very cold and unloving. And sort of Nyssa's family was the sort of exact opposite of that. They gave him the sense of family and love and warmth that he sort of never had. So when he starts having pants feelings for Nyssa, he's all like, oh, no, can't go there, can't like ruin this, perfect family dynamic that I have here. I need them too much. And her brother sort of put that in his head sort of as well. Because Desmond sort of has the thought that he can't love because he's never been raised in love and taught to love because his parents were like such cold, unfeeling people. So obviously he doesn't have the capacity to love. And so her brother, Nyssa's brother, kind of warned him away as well. And so when we start the story, Nyssa is going to be house sitting for a friend of hers who they were going to go somewhere. And so she sublets her place because she's going to go house sit for her friend. Well, turns out the friend's trip fell through and she won't be leaving at all. So now Nyssa doesn't have anywhere to go because she's already rented out her place since she wasn't supposed to going to be needing it for a couple of months. So she's essentially homeless now. So somehow she ends up living with Desmond for 2 months for the summer. And of course feelings happen. But I liked this book, but I didn't love it. I was on the way to loving it, but then the ending kind of really fell flat for me. Because Desmond does all these like wonderful things for Nyssa and her friend, who has a kidney disease and is essentially dying. And he's there for her. He's there for them, and it's just this. He does all these like loving, beautiful things, and of course they do. Nyssa and Desmond do eventually, end up becoming lovers, but always with Desmond kind of like holding himself apart and being like, oh no, I'm just giving into my feelings here, but I it's not love. I'm not capable of love, and blah blah blah. And then he sort of like just pushes her away, kind of, because she's sort of afraid to wish for more, kind of thing, from him. And then I think it's her mother, or I think it's her mother that she's talking to, and then they make this big thing of her having the realization that she's actually in love with him. And I was like, wait, what? That's not like, you knew you were in love with him. You were in love with him since you were like 16, and he like took you to the prom. Like, what do you? I don't know. I didn't understand them making such a big deal of her having this revelation, like, oh my God, I'm in love with him, but I can't be in love with him because he doesn't love me, and like he never said he loved me, and that whole thing. But I was like, throughout this whole book, you're talking about your feelings for him. And yes, at times she's trying to tell herself, oh, like it was just a crush of when I was a teenager, and I've outgrown it, or what have you. But as the story goes on, you're in her head, and you're with her when she's like thinking these things of like having these feelings for him and like all that. So like her sudden realization that she was in love with him just felt really redundant and stupid to me, because she knew that she was in love with him this whole time. That was the whole point of her not initially going to him to have a place to stay, because she felt like it would be awkward because of her feelings for him. And then he pushes her away because he overhears her realization that she's in love with him. And he pushes her away because he, doesn't want, he thinks that he's not capable of love, and blah, blah, blah. But of course, they end up, getting their heads out of their asses and like being together and happily ever after. So I liked this book very much. The ending just felt kind of flat for me, because it felt like that third act conflict that 9 times out of 10 is unnecessary in a book. It just felt like that was thrown in there to make the book longer. It didn't feel natural to me. So I liked it 99% of the time. So Next we have The Other Side of Midnight by Sidney Sheldon. And all I have to say is fuck you, Sidney Sheldon. What this man did. So, we start the book where there's this girl named Noelle. Noelle? I think her name is Noelle. And she's on trial for murder. And you get all these different sort of perspectives of these different characters who know Noelle and have varying feelings about her. And there's this one guy forgot what his name is. I want to say Isaac? He was some kind of Israel. Yeah, he's the doctor. Who talks about how he would do anything for her, and when I read later on what she does, I'm not talking about the murder. I'm not even, because I didn't get that far. But the fact that this doctor could stand by her and speak of her so warmly, as if like he was pretty much in love with her. But when I got to like what she did, I could not believe that in the prologue he's talking about her with such warmth and love. So, Noelle is this girl in France or Athens. She's this girl. And she falls in love with this guy named Larry. Oh, well, first she is given she is basically sold by her father to this man, to this other man. She's pimped out to this old man who essentially rapes her. But she sort of turns it around to where she sort of learns her power over men and how she can seduce them and use her body to sort of get whatever she wants. So she manages to seduce this man out of all his money, and she leaves him. I was okay with that. But it sort of had left her kind of like very hard and not willing to trust people. Then she falls in love with this guy named Larry Douglas. And she falls like hard, like completely in love with him. And it seems like, you know, that this beautiful love story is starting, and then like they're gonna get married and all this, and then he doesn't show up. He pretty much abandons her. And Noelle clearly snaps. And she vows vengeance on him, and she's gonna make him pay. And then she finds out she's pregnant. And so that's how we get her involved with the doctor, Dr. Israel Katz. And so I'm thinking, okay, she goes to him and she's like, that I don't want this baby, which I could understand. She's by herself. Her lover has as far as she knows, abandoned her. She wants no reminder of him, and she doesn't want to have a child. Fine. That's not where the problem lies. The problem lies that she wants to take revenge. So her plan is to kill his baby, and then I guess like somehow find him and tell him that she killed his baby. Which it's kind of shitty, but that's not quite what her plan is. This woman has so snapped that she doesn't want to abort the baby as soon as she finds out she's pregnant. No. She wants the baby to grow inside of her. She wants it to grow as much as it can, like practically right before it's born, so that it has like it's sort of like as cognizant as it can be. sort of like right before it's born, so it can like feel and hear and you know, like it's being fed, and it's like sort of, she wants to leave the abortion as late as possible because she wants this baby to feel pain when she kills it. It's like she's transferring all her hatred and all her wanting to inflict pain on the father. She's doing it to this innocent baby. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me right now, Sidney Sheldon? You wrote something that disgusting? And that evil? Now, you're talking to a girl who is completely pro-choice. Your body, your choice. However, the fact that this woman wants to deliberately feed and nurture and grow this baby inside of her so that it will feel pain when she kills it. And Israel is telling her like the whole time, he's like, what do you mean you don't want, like, you just told me you don't want this baby. So you're like a month or so pregnant. We'll find you someone to do the abortion. And then she's like, no. I want it to feel pain like I'm feeling pain, that its father abandoned me. I want it to suffer like I'm suffering because his father abandoned me. And so, like, the first trimester passes, and Israel's like, you need to, if you're gonna do this, you're gonna need to do it now, because you're not gonna find a doctor who's going to do this abortion in like your second or third trimester. And then she's like, no, not yet, not yet, not yet. She's in her last trimester, y'all. And Israel is like, you are not going to find a doctor who's going to abort this baby when you're 7 months, 8 months pregnant. So what does she do? She takes a coat hanger. I'm just going to not even go further than that, because that's when I DNF the book. That is vile. And then that was only like the first couple of chapters. And I was like, I'm sorry. Is this who I'm supposed to be rooting for? Is Noelle the heroine of this story? Because, like, the way it starts off, she's, like I said, on trial for murder. And I'm like, what the... And I'm guessing, like, I skimmed sort of the rest just to, out of my own more morbid curiosity. And Larry and her sort of get involved in the murder together, so I guess she hooks up with Larry again. I don't know. And he gets involved with this woman, Catherine, and I think she's the one that dies, that is murdered. I don't know. But after that scene where Noelle kills her baby, I DNF'd it. I was like, no. And no, I'm not, no. Because I remember watching a movie something, If Tomorrow Never Comes or something like that, with Madeline something. And I remember that it was based on a Sidney Sheldon book, and I remember my mom really liked that movie and or miniseries. I don't remember really much anything about it. So I've always sort of been interested in reading sort of Sidney Sheldon because he felt like the sort of books that I like, you know, those epic sagas with like glamour and glitz and all this stuff. And no, sir. No, sir. That was vile that he would write a woman doing that. No. So like who's this couple on the cover? I don't know. Because apparently I think Catherine is the one that's murdered. And I can't see who the other heroine of this would be. No. That book needs to go away. No. The next one is Robin Donald's by Royal Demand, and this is the most recent one that I've finished. I liked it. It was okay. It's Gabe and Sarah. And Gabe is from this is the prince of this like fictional kingdom. And he and Sarah fell in love and were gonna get married. But then this famous family necklace disappears. And he is made to believe that Sarah stole it. And so the engagement is clearly, obviously off. And so they, Sarah leaves and goes to, try to lick her wounds and get over her broken heart and all this. But Gabe is still convinced that Sarah took it. So he decides that he's going to kidnap her and force her to give back the necklace. However, Sarah is like, I don't have your fucking necklace. And there's this whole legend about fairies, and like the necklace is called the Queen's Blood Necklace because the queen like died or was murdered or something, and then she became a fairy or some. And so Sarah the whole time has been insisting that she was not the one who stole the necklace, that it was the maid, Myra Mara, who stole the necklace. And so I liked it, but I felt like the love scenes sort of were kind of very abrupt. And I felt that they didn't really flow with the story. Like, they would be all like, he would be all cold to her, and they would be like fighting or something, and then like, then he would like grab her and kiss her, and then while they were like making love and like in the afterglow, he would be like so like sweet and like warm to her. Which, romance sort of has that. That's a common thing in romance where like the passion overtakes you and you just fall into bed. But I felt like usually like there's at least like some kind of like flow and like tension and like sensual thing that sort of leads them to that moment where they snap and fall into bed. This sort of, every sort of encounter, it didn't really have that. It was sort of like they're talking they're being like mean to each other, or he's being mean to her, and then he just like all of a sudden grabs her and they're having sex in like the forest or something. I it I just found the love scene sort of very abrupt, and they didn't sort of flow with the story. And then I felt the ending revelation was kind of felt like really flat. And I'm going to spoil it. Myra did actually steal the necklace because of the legend of that's a part of like their heritage, and that she was testing Gabe's love for Sarah, and that he failed, clearly, because he sent Sarah away, even though he believed that Sarah had been unfaithful to him, on top of stealing the necklace. In a sort of unrelated plot of her being in bed with this guy, but it was actually just a doctored photo from a paparazzi dude trying to squeeze Gabe for money. So it didn't really have anything to do with there was no connection to the stealing of the necklace. So I thought that was kind of, that fell flat to me. So yeah, I liked this book, but it just kind of, the ending was sort of, yeah. The next one was Catherine Stone's The Other Twin. And so there's an accident on a highway, and this woman goes into labor when the car accident happens. Her husband and I think his father, or there's two cars, and she's in one car, the husband's in the other car. They're both sort of in the accident, but her husband and I think the people in like his car are the ones that die. And then I think the woman has twins. And so the prologue is the man and the woman, and they're meeting their families and stuff, and the guy is the one who's sort of like from the richer family, and she's not as of the same sort of social class, and his parents are sort of reluctant at first to accept her, but eventually they do, and they actually become really close. And so she finds out that she's pregnant, and is gives birth to twins after this horrible accident. And then it switches automatically to the main character, Paige, and then she meets Gwen. But and you find out that, of course, these are the twin sisters. Or sisters, but apparently not twins, because they're not, they don't look alike. Otherwise, them seeing each other would definitely, kind of, they must be fraternal twins. So it ends, the prologue ends with the accident and her starting to go into labor. And then it switches to years later, and the women are already adults. But they know each other, and they're actually friends. They don't know clearly that they're sisters, but they're in each other's circle, and like they know each other. And I think Gwen is a doctor, doctor. No, Paige is a doctor. And Gwen is a makeup artist. And she has like a birthmark. And it just I found the two women to just be kind of dull and like boring, and it's like I didn't really care about either of them. And I found the writing style changed completely between the prologue and the beginning of the main story, where you have, like, it was hard to follow what was happening. And, like, Gwen was, like, talking to herself. I don't know. I found it just very, very odd. It just, yeah, it just really just did not work for me. Yeah, I just found when you finally get to the future with like the grown two women, the storytelling just dies. It just becomes dull. And I DNF'd it. I DNF'd it. One, because I found myself not really caring about Gwen or Paige. And two, because I found the writing really sort of confusing about who was talking to who about what and thinking about who, and yeah. So this one sadly did not work for me. Another hit Harlequin presents, it was an old school one, Carol Mortimer, Hidden Love, which, you know, I usually like Carol Mortimer and her old school kind of Harlequins. But this one, Rachel and Nick. Nick is a tennis player. And he is, she's like just out of high school, or I think she's like maybe 18, and he is older. And I liked her, I liked Rachel, but Nick came off as like very sort of overbearing. They meet because she helps out his pregnant sister as she's in the park. The sister is starting to go into labor. So Rachel just sees this woman in clear distress, and gets her to the hospital, and then Nick shows up, and, you know, that's how they meet. And Nick just seemed like very overbearing to me. Like Rachel did this nice thing for his sister, yes, and he like offers to drive her home, and then he like on the way home he's like insisting that like she go out to dinner with him, and Rachel understandably is like, I don't know, like I just basically, you know, like met you, and like you're a good looking guy and all, but you're, you know, I don't know you. And she's like, understandably, as a young girl, a little reluctant to just go out to dinner with this like random older man. And then he like picks her up for dinner, but she finds out before the dinner that he's actually a famous tennis star. And then she's like, no way, this dude is totally out of my league, I have to call and cancel, and blah blah blah. But he doesn't accept her cancellation. He shows up for the date and like strong arms her basically into accepting going out with him. And before dinner takes her to his apartment, which she thinks is understandably weird, Which, I'm sorry, even as a grown woman, I would think that was weird and would raise all kind of red flags with me. But she's sort of being gaslit and portrayed into believing that, she's just young and unsophisticated, and this is what grown-ups do. Like a grown woman would think nothing of, first going to a man's apartment before they go out for dinner, who she's never gone out with before. And he's walking around, like getting dressed in front of her. And I was just like, what? Like, no, none of what is happening right now is okay. Like, so this one just really did not work for me. Nick needed to, like, freaking chill. And he was just way too overbearing, even for a Harlequin Presents hero. Because, listen, I love how inappropriate my Harlequin Presents line is. But we all have our thresholds, And for me, Nick sort of went over the threshold. He did not work for me, just like, no. So. Oh, next we have Val Wood's The Doorstep Girls. And I enjoyed this book very, very much. I have only one nitpick, which I'll get to. So Doorstep Girls is Ruby and Grace, and they live in this very poor English neighborhood in the 1800s? In the a very long time ago. And so they're very, very poor. Grace is a smidge better off than Ruby, because Ruby is being raised by a single mother, and her older brother has left them to go like live on the sea or whatever, and isn't really sending money home. He sort of abandoned them as well. And then she has this other little brother who the mother essentially sells to become a chimney sweep. And for many of those boys in that time, that wasn't a great life for them. Granted, they weren't having the best life at home, but a lot of children sort of died in that profession. And Grace is sort of in like a better-ish situation in that she has both her parents, and they do work, but they're struggling sort of as well. So it's this sort of beautiful friendship between Ruby, Grace, and then this new family that moves in and has a son around their age named Daniel, who starts a relationship with Grace, but who Ruby really has feelings for. Ruby is like very much has a crush on Daniel, but she won't say anything about it or do anything about it, because it appears that he and Grace start a relationship, and so Ruby kind of like backs off and keeps her feelings hidden. And then there's this kid, Jamie, who is not the best boy. He basically pimps out his mother so that he and her can get money. So there's all manner of different ways of dealing with poverty in this neighborhood. And Jamie, Ruby's mother, whatever little money they might manage to scrounge up, Ruby's mother wastes on opium because she is a laudanum addict. So Ruby is really in a desperate situation, and Jamie kind of takes advantage of that by bringing her into his employ, as it were, and convincing her that if she works for him as a prostitute, then she can better her life and help her mother and all this. So she's very, of course, reluctant to do this, but they're desperate. They're that poor and that desperate. Meanwhile, Grace has sort of been getting involved with sort of the more social labor movement that's been sort of going on in her neighborhood, and sort of speaking up for workers' rights and women's rights, and she's getting more and more involved in that. And she catches the attention of this man named Martin, who happens to run along with his brother, like their family runs the factory that Ruby and Grace work at. So at first, Grace is kind of worried that, because they're speaking up for workers' rights and stuff, that she's going to lose her job. But she and Martin kind of strike up this friendship where, she takes him to, like, neighborhoods that are worse than hers and basically shows him what kind of is happening and why she's, why she's speaking out. So she doesn't, like, lose her job because of that, necessarily. She loses her job because she's so good at speaking out and giving these, like, public speeches and stuff that other people in the movement, higher up people, want to use her as sort of a spokesperson to go around and speak in these different towns and stuff, and to kind of, like, change things and change their neighborhoods for the better. So Grace is sort of going down this one path. Ruby is sort of going down this other path where before she even starts her new profession, the first client she has is this man named Edward, who happens to be the brother of Martin. So it's from the same family that own the factory that both girls have worked at. And now Edward, before he knew that Ruby was going to be involved in this profession, has been instantly attracted to her every time, like, that he saw her. Like, Edward is a little bit of a playboy, and he wanted him some Ruby from, like, day one. So when he shows up to this meeting up with this girl, this whore, this hooker, and finds out that it's Ruby, he, becomes obsessed with her and, like, wanting to, he wants her to only be with him. And that Ruby is like, well, I'm not sort of here she's thinking in her head, well, like, I'm not here for, like, my health. I'm not here for, like, to have a good time. I'm here because I have to be. So I can't just be with this one guy. I need to do what I have to do. But Edward convinces her that she doesn't have to be a prostitute, that he'll take care of her. So Ruby is like, jackpot. Like, what? I have this man who is going to, like, pay for everything and, like, take care of me and, like, do all these things for me, and I don't have to, like, sleep with a bunch of other men? Sign me up for that, please. So for a while, Ruby is like, her life definitely kind of improves. And it should be improving for her mother, but again, her mother is, like, too far gone with her laudanum addiction, so it's not gonna... It's kind of too late already for her mother, and it's very sad, sort of what happens with her mother, and because of Jamie, of course, gets mad that Ruby is not working for him anymore, yet seems to be having all this, like, wealth and comfort and stuff now, and he thinks that she owes him because if it wasn't for him, she would have never met Edward, and now she's gone off and is, like, having, like, this private arrangement with this dude, and Jamie's not getting any money, so he is pissed off, and he takes it out on her mother, and it's very sort of sad what happens. And then Daniel comes back and takes care of the Jamie situation for Ruby, and realizes that he and Grace don't really have more a romantic relationship with each other. They're more like just friends, and that it's actually Ruby that he is in love with. But then they have to get over the whole, like, she was a kept woman kind of thing. But he sort of handles that really kind of beautifully. I loved Daniel. My only criticism of this book was, so Ruby ends up with Daniel, and throughout, like, the book, there's a little bit of a sense of Martin kind of, like, having feelings kind of for Grace. But I felt like there wasn't enough of that to have her, like, all of a sudden at the end have this realization that, oh, she does have feelings. She has feelings for Martin, this guy who's, like, always sort of been, like, in the background and, like, helping her out with, like, things and pushing her in these directions where she can, like, get these opportunities and stuff. And I just felt like romantically I sort of wanted more between Grace and Martin. Because them just sort of, her just sort of, like, realizing her feelings for him, like, literally, like, in the last 2 pages or so. It wasn't enough for me. I wanted more there. But otherwise, I quite liked this book very, very much. I loved this book. Lorraine Heath never disappoints me. Never. I think this was the one, this was the one that, of the bunch that I've read, that I actually loved this book so much. It is Houston and Amelia. And Amelia is a mail-order bride who is here to marry Dallas. But Dallas can't go pick her up at the train station, so he sends his brother Houston. And so Houston has some issues because he is, he's scarred from a the war. And there's a bit of tension between the brothers because of stuff that happened, like, during the war, and how, like, their father died, and their father was just, like, not a nice man. Really, really not. And Dallas sort of has a lot of guilt around that, and it's kind of made him a hard man, almost, where, like, he's almost like his father, but not, he's not as bad. Like, he does have, like, warmth and, like, affection, but he keeps those things very sort of, like, bottled up inside. He doesn't like to show them, whereas Houston is sort of like that in a way, kind of, as well. But he and Amelia, obviously, as he's bringing her home to his brother, they develop the happy pants. And I just loved this book so much. Their younger brother, Austin. That young man. I loved him so much. I'm certain that Dallas likely gets his own book. And Austin better get his own book. Because, oh my god, that precious boy! I loved him so much. This story was just beautiful. Just beautifully written. And just, I have no bad things to say about this book. At all. Like, the relationships, like, once Amelia, like, gets home and is, like, interacting with, like, the three men, because, like, Austin, he's, like, a teenager, but, you know, and how, like, she does kind of soften Dallas up, but the way that, like, the pining, y'all, between her and Houston, the pining, I just, this book was beautiful. And I just loved how everything sort of got resolved, and how Dallas dealt with the fact that Amelia and Houston had these feelings for each other, and how he stepped back because he was like, well, I'm kind of, like, spoiling it, but it's a romance novel. You're going to assume that Houston and Amelia end up together. And I thought that, like, does Dallas die? Like, is that how they end up together? But nope, I can tell you Dallas does not die. And these people actually have conversations with each other. So, I thought this was so well done. And Lorraine Heath just has this gift for, you know, like, there's the sexy times, but the way that she makes you care about the characters and how she just infuses the moments with, like, emotion, and so it's like you feel so much for these people, so that when they do get their happy endings, you're happy for them, and it just matters that much more because you've come to care about like all these characters. And like, I think like the way that she wrote Dallas's handling of his brother being in love with his wife, essentially, was just so well done. I was really worried to like, how is this good? How is Dallas going to handle this? So and brilliant, just brilliantly done. I have no bad things to say about this book. 5 stars, definitely. Next we have, I'll kind of like do these kind of together. The Hero of Hope Springs by Macy Yates. And yeah, I'll talk about this one first, because this one hasn't like an actual reason why I DNF'd it. The Hero of Hope Springs by Macy Yates. And you have Ryder and Sammy. And Ryder has sort of been taken care of. Yeah, like his parents died, and so he's sort of been the one who like raised kind of his siblings, or he's the one like sort of taking care of them. And I think Sammy was his like best friend, and it's sort of like a friends to lovers kind of thing. But and Sammy was like a little bit kind of like raised by him too, but she's not related to him, thankfully. And he's, they kind of like have pants feelings for each other. And so now Ryder hears that Sammy is thinking about having a baby. And I don't remember, I don't think she's asking him to be the father of her baby. She just sort of, I'm not sure if like he overhears it or she brings it up to him, but she like doesn't, I don't think she has a job. She has like she is not equipped to have or handle a baby. And he's trying to like give her advice and tell her that like, like you're not, there's more to having a baby than just like wanting one. And I've been like I didn't have these children. Like these children that I've been raising, like they're not mine. They're my siblings that I've grown, like been having to take care of. And it's hard, and like you're saying that you want to have a baby by yourself. Like you don't want to like get married or like want like a man sort of in your life, which that trope is really starting to bug me the older I get. Because, and this might, sound controversial or whatever, but I don't really care. As someone who was raised in a single parent home, I can tell you it's not ideal. I would hazard to say that most single mothers that would not be their first choice on how they would want to grow their family. Most would prefer to have a two-parent household so that a baby can grow up feeling secure and taken care of and have the warmth of an actual family dynamic raising them. And I feel like these books coming out where the woman just wants a baby and doesn't want the father to have any claim on or any involvement, or doesn't want anything to do with a man involved in their child's life, I think is incredibly damaging and selfish. Because let me tell you, just from my own personal experience, I would have much rather grown up in a home where I had two parents who loved each other and raised me in that love and security. Now, mind you, I'm saying two parents who loved each other. I am not an advocate for those families where the husband or the wife is abusive and let's stay together for the kids. No. No, because that does more harm than good. I'm talking about the idea of deliberately excluding the father from a child's life because you're a woman and you don't need a man and blah blah blah. And listen, I'm totally like that person where like I'm perfectly happy on my own. Oh my god. Yeah, I'm not to get sort of like all personal and you know, preachy. I love sort of my life as it is. Oh my god. But I would never, ever think of bringing a child into a world where they don't have that security of a two-parent household of like a father or a mother, or just a mother and a mother, or a father and a father, but a sort of two-parent support system household. I that really bothers me when they have stories where the woman deliberately goes out of her way because she wants a baby, but she doesn't want to sort of be in a relationship and doesn't want a man to influence, have any right to the baby. That really bothers me. Because it's like, as someone who like doesn't want a relationship, that's fine. Don't do that to your child. As someone who has grown up in a single person, single mother household, don't do that to your child. So that's why this book did not work for me, because he's trying to like basically tell her, like, oh, like, you don't have the financial means to, like, take care of a child. And she's like completely brushing him off, like, oh, I'll worry about that later, it'll sort itself out. My feelings, I need a baby, that baby will make me complete. But you're not equipped to take care of a child. I will be, don't worry about it. My feelings, I need a baby, that'll make me complete. It did not work for me. Just no. And I think I'm just gonna have to stay away from that trope from now on, because no. And next we have another Macy Yates, The Heartbreaker of Echo Pass. And this one bothered me because Griffin is has had a falling out with his family, and Iris is sort of very close to his family, and so she goes to the mountain cabin, what have you, where Griffin is, and basically tries to force him to come back to his family, and sort of guilt him into reuniting, like, with his family. And again, this really triggered me and bothered me, because if you have issues with your family, nobody has the right to pull that, oh, but it's your father, oh, but it's your mother, you should forgive them because she's your mother, you should forgive him because he's your father, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, bitch, mind your business. Iris had no right to go to Griffin and be laying on this guilt trip and, like, making him feel bad for not wanting to have anything to do with his family. And I DNF'd this book, because that just bothered me so much. Because Griffin, I only got a little bit of his feelings and stuff before I DNF'd it, certainly has his own reasons for not wanting to reunite with his family. And they are completely valid to him. So Iris has no business going up to his cabin, infiltrating his life, and trying to push him into reuniting with his family. Like, Iris, I'm glad for you that you have this great relationship with my family. I'm happy for you. But your experience with my family is not my experience with my family. So butt the fuck out. So that did not work for me. So I'm thinking, I have one more Macy Yates that I'm going to give one last try to, because I have it. It's Broke Down Cowboy. That is the next book of hers that I'm going to be reading. But if this one doesn't work for me, I think Macy Yates and I are just kind of going to be a one-night stand kind of deal, because I loved her book, her Harlequin Presents book, A Royal World Apart. And so I've been trying all these other Macy Yates, and they have not been working for me. So I'm going to give that one a last try. And if that one doesn't work for me, then I think Macy Yates and I are going to be breaking up. Another DNF that I'm sad about, because I really wanted to like this book because the beginning of it was awesome, and that's Maggie Osborne's Silver Lining. Now, the beginning of this book was fantastic. There is this sickness going around, and Lowdown, her name, is basically nursing sort of everybody through the town, in the town, through it, in like all these funny ways. She's like, if you die on me, then I'm gonna go find the treasure that you've hidden, and I'm gonna keep it to myself. If you die on me, I'm gonna tell your wife about this, that, and the other thing. It was just a very funny opening beginning. And then it got stupid. Because after she nurses like all these people through the pox, they all want to thank her in some way for everything that she did for them, for essentially saving their life. And they're like pushing her to be like, what is one thing that we can give you? What do you want? What do you want more than anything? And so she's like at a loss to like what she can ask for, because like she doesn't want to ask for anything, and like the one thing that she does want, she feels, shy about asking for, and doesn't think that it could be possible because it's just this crazy dream that she has. So finally they keep pressing her, and she finally admits that she wants a baby. So it's another one. It's another one of those. Where she wants a baby, but she doesn't want to get married. And it's funny in that she says this, that she wants a baby, and then they're all like, oh, well, geez, well, and they're all sort of understandably and logically reluctant to do this. And then I think it's the priest that is sort of like, you guys said that you would give her anything she wanted for blah, and now you're like blah blah blah, and like, you're not all like willing, not one of you is willing to marry this girl who like saved your life, and blah, and then Lowdown is like, wait, no, I don't want to get married, I just want a baby. And the priest is like, well, huh? And yeah, it just didn't. It just triggered that thing in me that I don't like. I just thought it was a stupid premise. Like, I didn't think that, like, that was going to be sort of how the I want a baby trope was going to sort of play out, where it's like the villagers who she's asking to do this. I just thought that it was going to be something like, and to be honest, now, like, I do think that I just really, this trope just really doesn't work for me anyway, so I don't think anyway it was going to work. Like, when I read the blurb, I thought, okay, like, I'll give it a try and stuff, but I think after trying that Macy Yates one, I was just sort of done with it, with that trope. So, yeah, it's so, like, they, like, they put, like, marbles in a bag, and then, like, whoever, like, picked, of the villagers who, like, picked the marble had to be the one to marry her. Like, no, that just, no, that just, no, didn't work for me, like, at all. And now we come to possibly the most disappointing book that I have read this year. And it's disappointing because I had such high hopes for this book. Because the nostalgia that I held this book in was so high. And clearly, my teenage self did not finish this book. Because I didn't remember anything from this book. I just remembered that what I read of it, I loved. Well, adult me feels very differently. And that is The Original Sin by Marius Gabriel. Now, the last book that I read that I ranted about was The Stolen Sisters by Louise Jensen. I read that book because it was compelling. I finished it because I wanted to see how this hot mess crazy sauce played out. And as I said in my rant review for it, that you can find here on my channel, every revelation just made me more and more angry. This book didn't even do that well. It wasn't compelling. It just made me angry. So we have Mercedes, who is living, well, when the book starts, she is divorced, and she has a daughter, teenage daughter, named Eden, who has been kidnapped. And then we flash back to Mercedes sort of as a child, growing up, I think, in Spain during the Spanish Civil War. And she is the product of a rape, where her mother was raped by one of the rich men in their town, in their city. And it, like, I was enjoying sort of her story and stuff, and then, like, as she gets older, she gets involved in sort of like the Civil War stuff, as like a rebel and this, and I didn't really, I found that stuff like a little bit boring. And she gets into this same-sex relationship with this nun who they're protecting from in the war. And I didn't like how she treated the nun. It, like, bothered me, like, a lot. And during this, then the nun sadly dies, and Mercedes is getting more and more disillusioned with the role that she's playing, being an anarchist and part of the rebels and stuff in this war. And it's during this battle that something's going on, and she risks her life to save this child. And there's this American soldier named Sean who, after she risks her life to save the child, she's in danger and he saves her. So somehow, this gives Sean a sense of entitlement to Mercedes. So it's like flashing back and forth between uh, Mercedes in the past and Mercedes sort of in the present, where her daughter has been kidnapped, and we get a little bits with like her daughter as sort of an adult, and like, well, not an adult, she's a teenager, 18, 19, and her daughter is very heavily involved in is like hooked on drugs and going through withdrawals in her kidnapped situation, because she's kidnapped, she can't get access to her heroin, so she's going through withdrawals, and the person who kidnapped her is taking revenge on Mercedes for a reason. So flashing back to Mercedes and Sean, who after he rescues Mercedes, thinks that he's gonna like walk her through the neighborhood because like it's not safe, and he's protecting her essentially, but she's very kind of like cold and just not, she understandably doesn't trust this random dude who like saved her life and stuff, but she's not gonna like fall all over herself. She's very sort of standoffish and aloof, and she's not a trusting person, understandably, because of like all the shit that she's seen. But he's like, no, like I'm gonna take you home and stuff, and like walk you home and make sure that you get there safe. Then they get to the apartment, and he's like, well, aren't you going to invite me up to your apartment? And she's like, no. And then he like pushes her to like, well, I saved your life, and you basically like you owe me, kind of thing. So she's like, fine, you can come up, and like, fine, like he's like, oh, I haven't eaten in like forever, and I don't think you've eaten too, so let me, I'll get you like food and stuff. And so like that's like, then they're going to his apartment, and he's like, or to her apartment, and he's like, aren't you going to invite me up to share this dinner that I have for you? Like, aren't we going to like eat it together, kind of thing? And she was like, no, like, thank you for the food, you can go now. And he's like, oh, but I went and like I got this food for you, and like and I saved your life, and you owe me, blah blah. And then she's like, fine, okay, like we'll have dinner, and then you can go, because she was not about to she didn't trust his intentions, let's just say, and she was right not to, because after dinner she's like, okay, well, thank you for the food, basically there's the door, kind of thing. And he's like, so you're just gonna like ask me to leave after like I saved your life and brought you this food? And he's like being like really really like aggressive and pushy, and finally like she pulls a gun on him and is like, okay, dude, enough is enough, you need to leave now, because she's starting to get scared. And he turns it around and is like, what the hell is wrong with you? Are you so like afraid of men that like you can't even like appreciate and accept help from somebody? And like, are you so broken? And I'm like, in my head I'm like, no, motherfucker, there's a war going on, and like men are like raping women left and right, and I don't know you, and I appreciate the food and all, but I don't owe you anything. But she sort of like weakens a little, and he takes that opportunity to basically pounce and grabs her and like throws her on the bed. And I'm like, oh my god, this son of a bitch is actually gonna rape her. And she's like struggling, but then he's like, stop fighting me, you need to like feel, like give in to your feelings as a woman, and like allow yourself to feel again. What happened to you that you're so closed off? And he's like, and she turns like the book actually has her like weakening and like giving in to him. Giving in to this fucker who essentially bulldozed his way and pressured her into bed, essentially raping her. And that's when I DNF'd it. But I skimmed the rest because I wanted that moment where, because when Eden gets kidnapped, the person who kidnaps her, you flash back and forth to his childhood, which was not great. And I sort of started to have a theory of who he was in relation to Mercedes. Because Mercedes meets her biological father, the man who raped her mother, and the way that the biological father thinks of Mercedes is just gross. He meets her when she's like 12, 13, and he starts having these like sexual feelings about her. And like when she's like, I think like 14 or 15 or something, he like basically molests her. And so when we meet Eden's kidnapper, Joel, and we learn about his childhood and how horrific it was, and he's raised by this Bible-thumping piece of shit couple who basically call him an abomination, and like that he's come from sin and blah blah blah, and sort of like, you know, like the way my mind works, I was like, okay, I think I know where this is going. And it was. So at this point I'm like skimming just because I want to see this confrontation between Joel and Mercedes. And it turns out, and I'm going to spoil it because I can't fully go into my rage without spoiling it. It turns out that yes, Joel is Mercedes' child that she gave away because he is a product of her father's rape of her. So her father rapes her, she gets pregnant, she gives the baby away. Understandably. However, my problem, and what increased my hatred of Mercedes, was when Joel is explaining to her the horrific abuse that he suffered at the hands of that couple, she could give two shits. She literally like just like shrugs and is like, well, I thought I was leaving you with good people. I was like, you cold-hearted. And she goes on to describe that about how she and that he was a product of rape, because he didn't know that, but I think he thought that she and because I think he learned that she and Sean, the American soldier who by the by raped her first, actually got married or were going to get married, because to Mercedes' mind, she and Sean had this, he was the love of my life, and that basically they had this beautiful love story that I didn't, like, again, I skimmed the book because I'm sorry, no, he raped you. And I just, no. I'm not sure what rationalizing you had to do in your brain, but there was no beautiful love story there. And then, like, she explains to Joel that, no, I gave you away because you're a product of rape. My father raped me, and I wanted no. Basically, like, she treats him like the couple, the Bible-thumping couple did. Like, he was an abomination that she wanted nothing to do with. And just her dismissal of the horrific abuse that he suffered just made me hate her as a character. And then we learn that Joel is the only biological child that she had. So she didn't even want to risk getting pregnant again by anyone. So she adopted Eden. So Eden is not even like her biological child. So Joel and Eden during this kidnapping had developed feelings for each other, not knowing that they were siblings. Or, well, Joel, I guess, must have known, because he knew that Mercedes was his mother, and so that's why the whole, like, revenge plot was hatched. But Eden definitely didn't know at the time, so she was developing feelings for him, and I guess Joel was sort of, like, fighting his feelings for Eden. But then he learns that, yeah, they're not actually blood-related sort of at all. So he is sort of left to sort of give free rein to, like, his feelings for her. And so he's going to, like, want to be with Eden. And then Mercedes does the most evil thing. She tells him that Eden is dead. She tells him that the woman that he loves is dead. Why? Again, I'm just skimming at this point. But it's like watching a train wreck. It's not even like, again, it wasn't the same as like The Stolen Sisters by Louise Jensen, where it was like compelling and you wanted to like keep reading. With the original Sin, it was just, I want to see how much more angry I can get. And yeah, it was like she wanted to make sure that this guy, this son of hers, stayed out of their life. So she tells him that Eden's dead, so he can just like go away. But then I think somebody tells him, I'm not sure if like it's her friend, that Eden is actually alive. And so he like goes to thankfully be with her. And I was happy with the fact that Joel and Eden actually ended up together. And Mercedes can go fuck herself. That evil, unfeeling, cold-hearted bitch. Oh, I hated her so much. I hated her as a character so much. And apparently, I'm in the minority. Because I went on Goodreads to check, like, if there was anybody else who felt the same way I did. No. 4 stars, 5 stars, epic, sweeping drama, so interesting, like, and you know how much I love my epic, soapy, melodramatic sagas. I am that girl. But I have to like the heroin for those to work. And this just did not. I mean, I hated her so much. And the way that they took this rapist, Sean, and totally, like, did some serious twisting to make it seem like she should want him in her bed. She should, like, that there was something wrong with her, that she didn't want this strange random soldier dude to come up into her apartment and have sex with her. That she owed him because he saved her life. That she owed him because he brought her food. And the fact that she wasn't willing to have sex with him meant that there was something wrong with her. And they took that, and Marius Gabriel took that and did some serious twisted shit to contort it into a supposed love story. No, sir. No. Biggest disappointment. I'm trying to think, like, of my reading life. Just because I had such high expectations for the nostalgia that I had held this book in. And then for it to just fall apart into this hateful train wreck. I find her as hateful as her rapist father. They were two peas in a pod, in my opinion. I said what I fucking said. Because what he did to her was a violation. What she did to her son was equally a violation. Because not only, and, like, I'm not even talking about her abandoning him, giving him up for adoption. Because, yes, child of rape, I can totally understand even wanting to abort the fetus. I'm looking at you, fucking Alabama and Mississippi and all these southern states that do not make exceptions in the condition of rape. But the fact that she actually had the baby and gave it away to what she assumed, like, she didn't even, like, care. She just did not want this reminder of this horrible violation. And then for her to turn around and basically violate the abuse that he suffered with that shrugging and dismissal, that was equally as violating. Because you're talking about a little boy who was just horribly abused. And then to turn around and want to punish him further by telling him that the woman he loved was dead. She was as bad as her piece of shit father. And to be honest, the guy that raised her wasn't a prize either, because he was this evil, Like, they sort of, like, glossed over it, like, just forget about that thing that he did. Like, he's raising her, and he married her mother, and, stand-up guy, and, He did some, like, horrible things during this riot to these nuns, and just, yeah, he wasn't, the guy that raised her wasn't a prize either. But, in my opinion, she was no different than her rapist, piece of shit biological father. So, yeah. I can't think of another book that I hated to that extent. It's not coming to mind right now. But right now, this one will probably be number one in the worst books of when I do my best of and worst of at the end of the year. Unless something tops it, this one will probably be number one. Just no. 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 Big no. So, those are the books that I read over the past couple of months. Favorite is, this one washes all that away. This one washes all that away. I love this book so much. So, that's going to be it for this lengthy little update here. Hope you enjoyed. Yeah, let me know your thoughts on any of these books that you read. Just, you can sort of like disagree with me and like what have you, but just don't kind of tell me that I'm wrong for thinking what I'm thinking or feeling what I'm feeling. Because my channel, my rules. Follow me on Twiddle. Twiddle. It's still better than X. Ain't nobody calling it X ever. Ever. It's Twitter. Follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/authorejamie. Like my Facebook page at facebook.com/authorejamie. And I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.